Today's video is going to be Naval Rank Explained, and this video is actually being made for a coworker of mine named Eddie. So, the Navy does things a bit differently than certain other branches, especially the Air Force, which is what Eddie was. He was an airman. We don't have MOS in the Navy, that's military occupational specialty, rather. We have a rate, and that's expressed in letters, not numbers in letters, unlike, say, the Army. We have rank, pay grade, example is E5. And we have rating, which is your rank and your rate mixed together. So there's multiple ways to refer to the same sailor, and this does actually confuse people when you're working in units where you have people from various other branches. So I have an example here. You got rank, which is an E3, and that's a seaman. Their rate is Operations Specialist, so their rating would be OSSN. I was an OSSN for like a year and a half. Man, I was slow to promote. So I'm going to be going through this list right here, and it's going to have rank, titles, and nomenclature. In other words, what would you actually call that guy, and rating. Now here I've used the initials BM, which stands for Bosun's Mate. Seaman recruit, they don't get a patch. You're only a seaman recruit for your first couple months. Practically by the time you're out of boot camp, you're promoted. Seaman apprentice is E2. You get those 2 white stripes. Seabid is E3. It's 3 white stripes. And so it's BMSA. So seaman, seaman apprentice, BMSA, BMSN. Now here we're coming to the petty officers. That's a non-commissioned officer. Very big day when you make that in the United States military. Now, that's going to be an E4, Petty Officer 3rd Class, and that's where you start get referred to as like BM3 for Petty Officer 3rd Class. That, by the way, to just explain these badges, that is a crow. Below the crow is the symbol of that rate and chevron. As you see, you get more chevrons as you get promoted. Then Petty Officer 2nd Class, BM, so you'd be BM2 or GM2 or OS2. Petty Officer 1st Class, E6. That's where you'd be BM1 or GM1 or OS1. Then you start getting into the chiefs. The Navy is very different here. Chiefs are kind of treated like officers. They definitely used to be. I've been out for a while. They even wear their uniform is the color of an officer's uniform. And for that reason, I didn't really like them. I have some very strong opinions on the officer class, and I'll get into that in just about a minute. So, Chief Petty Officer is at E7. And so you'd be like BMCPO, CPO standing for Chief Petty Officer. You'd really just refer to them, though, as Chief. No one says Chief Petty Officer. And you'll notice, too, you get what's I think is called a rocker. And that's this right here. And then there's Senior Chief Petty Officer, gets the rocker and the star, and would just be referred to as Senior. And you got Master Chief, oops, I actually misspelled that. I didn't notice till now, but, it's Freddy, so I don't care that much. So, Master Chief, E9, and you just call him Master Chief. So, points of confusion. Sometimes as tradition, the senior enlisted gunner's mates, bosun's mates, culinary specialists have nicknames. They'd be called Guns, Boats, Cookie. And there's a title called Command Master Chief. I never really liked these guys, Command Master Chiefs, because, again, they're kind of treated like officer class. Now we get to the officers. So, one of my first jobs in the Navy was mess cranking in the wardroom. And that basically means I cooked the officers' meals and did their laundry. God, I hated it. Right then and there, I knew I'd made maybe a bad decision, wanted to really get out. But hey, you got to stick out your contract. So here I have some nomenclature and whatnot. Some of these are going to be insults that you would never actually say to an officer. So Ensign, O1, Officer 1, called Butterfingers because of the officer insignia they'd have. And also, they do tend to screw some stuff up. The lowest ranking ensign on a ship wears a massive belt buckle that has a bull on it, and that ensign is actually responsible for a lot of stuff. Then there's O2, Lieutenant Junior grade. And then there's O3, and this maybe is what's throwing Eddie off a bit, because everywhere else that symbol actually means captain, and here it just means lieutenant. And sometimes that's referred to as two track, like if a Lieutenant JG is getting upgraded or getting promoted, to say he's making two tracks. Lieutenant Commander. Sometimes you can just say Commander in a conversation for sake of brevity. Commander is an O5, and that's an oak leaf. The value is on silver apparently. That's a good way to memorize it. And you have the captain, who can sometimes be called a skipper. I'll explain a bit more about that. Rear Admiral lower half is 07, and this is the equivalent to a brigadier general. He's called Rear Admiral lower half. Admiral is just how you would address him. Flag officer, and you could call him a 1-star admiral. Flag officer might confuse people, but that's just when you get promoted, wherever you are, you can, to 07 and above, wherever you are, you'll fly a flag with however many stars you are as an admiral. Rear Admiral upper half, analogous to Major General. Also called, just again going to be called Admiral, referred to as a flag officer, 2-star Admiral. Vice Admiral, 09. Vice Admiral, again, flag officer, 3-star Admiral. And finally, you're at 010, Admiral, flag officer, 4-star Admiral. Vice Admiral's equivalent to Lieutenant General, and Admiral just General. Now, occasionally there have been 5-star Admirals, but they're very rare. And they're called, I believe the formal name for that is Fleet Admiral. Points of confusion. Top ranking officer of the ship, commanding officer, is referred to as skipper. And this can be even if they're lower than, say, a captain. So let's say you're only an 05 and you have command of a ship, which can be done, generally speaking, the smaller size of the boat, the lower in command the skipper will be in terms of his ranking. Brown shoe denotes an officer who was an aviator. An Iron Eagle is someone who cannot be promoted above 06. Maybe that person has a specialty where they're just not going to be in command of anything of the relevant size that would call for that. Now, I left it off here, but some people have wondered about what a Commodore is. A Commodore is just the head of many naval units. So, for instance, in Sasebo, Japan, each captain had their ship. A Commodore, though, was above them all, and the Commodore was responsible for all the ships. Commodore is a title, not a rank. I know Eddie was confused about that. Now, we do have one more issue to address, and that's the very mysterious warrant officers. So, for those of you not in the know, warrant officer is kind of a very strange designation. What a warrant officer is somebody who is an officer. You salute him and everything like that, say sir or ma'am. They have very narrow, defined responsibilities, and they specialize in one field. You've got, just Chief Warrant Officer 1, Chief Warrant Officer 2, Chief Warrant Officer 3, 4, and 5. Chief Warrant Officer 5s, that's a very elite club to be in. I'm not quite sure. I've been out for so long, I'm not quite sure about the process of how you'd go and do it. But it's super rare. At the time you make warrant officer in the United States Navy, you've been in probably 2 decades. Now, other branches, you can just be directly recruited for warrant officer. Navy's different in that regard, so I understand why some people are confused. But either way, that's really all I got. I hope that I've demystified things for you, Eddie.